Sorry, this subject matter took me quite a while to finish today. Anyway, VIP of Bizarre Interest Productions, and darn, my non-Beyblade videos don't do well at all. Well, that's what I get for not posting enough content. How bad is allergy season gonna get this week? Hell, I better act now before things get worse. Anyway, thanks to the 10 people who watched the Crazy Rich Asians fun fact video, and I saw the votes on my poll. I'll do the Asian Power Rangers responsible for half a Twilight after this. So, way back around 5 years ago or so, the black people actually die first in horror movie conversation was going on. And while I was thinking back on it, I was noticing that there were a lot more movies where black people either survived or died in the middle of the movie or got killed near the end, especially with TV shows like Scream Queen, Scream the series, and Slasher the series being more prominent around that time. And then I had a conversation with myself that basically went, hey, can you name a horror or slasher movie made in the West where the Asian guys survive? Yeah, Victor Crowley, Hatchet 3. Okay, now name an Asian woman. Wish Upon? Technically? Okay, name another. Fuck. So I figured, hey, one day, why don't I just do a bunch of research and find out if Asian and Asian American and Asian people do survive Western horror movies? I know it's a cop-out to say, oh, yeah, of course they do. Just look at Japanese horror movies. And true, of course, an entire genre of movies in a particular country where it's a majority of that group of people would have survivors. But I also want to look at this from an Asian American perspective and American perspective. Plus, there are survivors in Japanese horror movies. Like, let's be honest, some of the more darker ones don't have any survivors. And even if they do, the path to getting the happy ending is going to be bittersweet at best and frustratingly suffering at worst. Kayako versus Sadako from the Ring and Grudge crossover had the heroes come up with a clever way to defeat them both, only for their plans to backfire, well, backfuse on them. Whereas most of the movies we're talking about at least have the possibility of many people surviving. So, we're going to start with who died, and I'm breaking this up into 3 categories. Who died early on in their respective series, and if they were fleshed out before them. Ones who had a huge impact on the story, and if their role made sense with how they died. And then we're going to talk about characters who are sort of mixed before talking about Asian characters who have survived horror movies. Because the answer is a lot more complicated than people give it credit for. First, there's Peter from The Grudge, played by John Cho, and his character played a role in the middle of the film where his characters learned that their unborn child would be born with a genetic disorder, stumbles across a ghost and is attacked, gets corrupted by the curse, and ends his family before dying himself. The movie wasn't well received, but most critics agreed John Cho was doing his best with the material he was given, and at least there was some meat on his character's bones. Less so was Albert Keel's character in 2013's Evidence, where he was a 16-year-old runaway joining the cast from a massacre on the bus trying to go to Vegas to make it big, and his character Steven ends up being the first one to be killed. That movie introduced the cast finding out what happened to the victims and our survivors, so it makes sense, but still, Asian guy dies first. Wonder if that might be a pattern later. Speaking of which, Unfriended Dark Web had DJ Lex, 2 X's, played by Savira Windyani, shoved off a building, being the first one of the friends to die by Chiron and the Circle as a setup to frame Matthias or whoever took the abandoned laptop at the internet cafe for the horrible snuff crimes they committed. All we knew about her was that she earned a cultural exchange scholarship and graduated summa cum laude with a double major in economics and music. Yeah, at least there was enough there for you to feel bad just like the other 2, but yeah, first one to die. In terms of first victims, there's also Bruce Yamada, who, while is the 4th victim of the grabber, in chronological order, we learned that he's the first victim early on, in terms of who we see. We actually see him against the main protagonist, Finney, in the baseball game, who managed to get him to miss twice before Bruce hit the ball for a winning goal. And they show he's a likable sport since he congratulates Finney and compliments him before getting kidnapped by the grabber on his way home. And we later find out he attempted to dig a tunnel under the wall and was tortured and murdered by the grabber. As a ghost, he even forgot his name in life. Heck, we even get a flashback of him developing his baseball love and bond with his parents. Finn is able to talk to his spirit on the phone and recognize him, though. Thankfully, at the end, Bruce is able to taunt the grabber with his fellow victims after the advice he and the others gave to Finn allowed him to defeat him. I'd say compared to everyone else I mentioned, his actions at least ended up contributing to the plot compared to the ones I talked about before. Taking a break, let's talk about Try Anything and You Get Canceled Bro, Asian guy from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022, who was played by the director Shintaro Shimosawa, only credited as Party Guy. Hot take, I'm fine with the line, and hotter take, they didn't deserve to die. Look, I'm not saying the bus massacre wasn't a great scene, but I feel like some people were way too excited upon seeing a bunch of Zoomers die. In terms of who definitely deserved it, Dante was the one who caused the illegal eviction that led Leatherface's caretaker to have a heart attack, while everyone else there was trying to renovate the town since he told Melody it was practically abandoned, so he lied. And yes, you could argue the canceled line was a jab at millennial and Gen Z influencers, especially since everyone's holding up their phones to record Leatherface. But to be fair, Leatherface was blocking the main exit. He's literally a random stranger to these guys. Almost none of the cast besides the main ones even knew existed. And even if he did try to attack them and they believe they could have survived, that would have been evidence for authorities to recognize they were telling the truth. I get it. Influencers are annoying, but neither he or anyone else needed to die. And besides, Dante already died before that. There's also little to say on Aaron Yu's character Marcus Yun from Nightmare on Elm Street's remake. He was a victim of Freddy talking about the preschool in his dreams Freddy brings him to, falls asleep, and gets killed, making him the first Asian victim in the Nightmare on Elm Street series, at least. His character gets much more to do in the Friday the 13th remake in Chewy for just being a likable, funny stoner with Lawrence. His friends made him ride in the back of the car for no reason. Him burning his lip, him drinking from the shoe when Trent refused to. In fact, his death scene was pretty iconic because he actually tried to be friendly with Jason, offering a hockey stick with his mask to go with the look of his outfit. And the behind the scenes of what Aaron was willing to do for the death scared Jason's actor. And in the film, Lawrence went out to find him since he valued him as a friend that much. Speaking of Friday the 13th, there's that lesser quality of Part 8 Manhattan with Eva Watanabe, played by the underappreciated Kelly Hu, who was nice and sweet and the mean girl's sweet best friend, but was basically the Asian and nerdy stereotype. Honestly, I think they could have combined her and Rennie's character into a traumatized scholar attacked by Jason, and distances herself from her toxic classmates and ends Jason herself by making her the first Asian final girl. But that's a video for another day, and we'll talk about the actual first Asian female final girl later. Kelly acted her heart out for the death scene, at least. Switching over to TV shows, Slasher Season 3, Solistis had Amy Chow, sole survivor of a car crash, had accidentally injured a guy who wanted to test her asexuality. Her douche boyfriend was murdered, and the guilt almost led her to game over. But she stopped. Then the druid uses a power drill to her head to end her. Yikes. Technically, she's not all innocent because someone in her neighborhood made fun of the guy she accidentally killed online, which is why she was targeted by the killer when she refused to help take down the post earlier. But she pointed out it wasn't her responsibility and she wouldn't have been able to just remove it from the internet entirely. Thankfully, she's only the 6th victim and made it halfway through, but that was still brutal. Even the fans think that she deserved to live, and given Season 3 wanted to explore the grave morality of the people living inside the apartment, she's in the half of survivors who people really think doesn't deserve her fates. Then there's Scream Queens with Sam, aka Predatory Les. That's the show's nickname for her, not mine, because the rich girls are the protagonists with the likable prejudice in Zayday and Grace. Like, the principal calls her fodder, and the moment she actually gets some character development with Chanel number 3, she dies in the same episode offering to help the Red Devil after she bargains to let her know who they are since they were going to end her already. I don't hate the character, but yeah, making your Asian LGBTQ character or perverted lesbian and treating her as a punchline didn't feel all that cool, Ryan Murphy, not gonna lie. Speaking of LGBTQ Asian characters, let's talk about Brad Chang from Truth or Dare. Clunky exposition about his dad being homophobic aside, actually making us feel sympathetic for him, and him being forced to tell the truth to his father without us seeing the emotional response afterwards was interesting. Long story short, the demon dares him to make his dad beg for his life, but his dad is too late and he's gunned down by his dad's partner. Like, I genuinely feel bad for Brad, and that movie's probably made it so that he has the least messed up death. But yeah, that was a really tragic end for a supporting main character in the group. Like, damn. Finally, let's talk about Scream, because the funny thing is they didn't actually have a lead Asian character in any of the films until we got to the TV show in Riley Maurer, played by the lovely Brianne Zhu, who was socially awkward, somewhat shy, and had a cute budding relationship with horror expert Noah. She's the only Asian character in the main cast and doesn't make it past episode 3, being the first of the main cast of characters that is killed. In universe, her death actually affected almost everyone involved, since even the more meaner characters felt bad, and she was easily the most innocent out of all of Emma's friends. They even gave her character a memorial service, and they even had another character refuse to let another one sit at her seat. Like, it's sweet, but yeah, you know, the first important person to die, and mostly used as a vehicle to flush out the rest of the cast. Though, we'll talk about Brianna Sue later on. Then there's Anika in Scream 6, who just happened to have one of the saddest and emotional deaths, especially given the work put into the latter scene, with her girlfriend in anguish before the rest of the movie just kind of forgets to bring her up. And that's not throwing shade on Anika, because everyone in the Scream community felt like she was the only death before the reveal that people actually cared about. But it's a little annoying how the movie just kind of moves on for that, which is a shame, because her actress did a good job, and she was pretty sweet. Oh yeah, I forgot about Hostel, and this one really upsets me the most, which was Kana's treatment. Like, Paxton managed to help her escape despite the torture they made him do to her. They managed to get to the train, but because she saw how messed up her being disfigured looked, she threw herself onto an upcoming train. Like, yes, I know the sequel was going to kill off Paxton too, so fair enough. But in terms of an optimistic ending, wouldn't it have been better if Paxton and Kana survived together, and the second movie could have had him helping her heal and get surgery before they kill him off, to show that he and her were actually improving, which would actually make his early demise in the second film feel even more tragic? So, yeah, that was depressing. So let's talk about the survivors, but before I get to them, I have two weird mentions, or rather three, in which they technically survived one movie but died in another one, or they died and survived in the same movie. It's weird, I know, just trust me on this one and let me explain. Also, if you're enjoying this content, please leave a like, comment, or subscribe, because it takes me a long while to make these videos, especially given allergy season. And this video kind of took it out of me for a few hours after recording. So, Juno from The Descent is an interesting situation. In part 1, she's accidentally responsible for the whole mess that got everyone trapped into the cave and was having an affair with Sarah's husband. She's self-absorbed, doesn't accept responsibility for her major screw-ups, and accidentally murdered one of her friends. Yeah, Juno's determination to find Sarah and protect her makes her both someone that can be both a protective friend and wanted to make amends for everything she's done to her people. Like, even the creators admitted they wanted the audience to flip-flop between whether or not to love or hate her. Then there's a sequel where she and Sarah manage to reunite and sacrifice themselves in order to get the other survivors to escape after they make up. As much as people found the second movie unnecessary, given Juno's fate was very ambiguous from the first film, I understand why they made a sequel. Meredith McNeil, played by Cindy Park, is half black, half Korean, and was the friend of the protagonist Claire in Wish Upon, who was not afraid to call her out on using the box where she realized it was continuously killing people, which also resulted in her death via elevator cable breaking. Same with Gina, who's Chinese and tries to help Claire and Ryan out. Thankfully, a protagonist managed to revive them at the end with a wish, but yeah, a lot of people wish Meredith was the protagonist instead. So let's talk about who survived fully and hopefully bring this video on a more positive note, because there are a few final girls and final boys to talk about. First, let's talk about Ryan from Wish Upon, because we really don't get about 3 people of Asian descent in one horror movie, and out of the 3, he's the only one to survive without any sort of caveat. Just for the record, I don't think a movie is better or not just in case someone survives. It likely just depends on the circumstances, but I don't see an Asian guy be the final boy and love interest in a horror movie often, so that's pretty cool. Scream 5 had Deputy Vincent. Granted, he was shown as incompetent and was mostly just a bit player, since most of the cops couldn't even manage to protect him from Ghostface. But he survived, which is still better than how the cops were treated in 4. Stephen Yun was the final boy in Mayhem. Derek Cho having to work through him losing himself to his job, refusing to turn against Melody for the sake of profit and power while being affected by a virus infection, and not only winning but also managing to get his other boss kicked out. Yeah, he earns his final boy status. While he's not a main character, Detective Kayako in Malignant didn't die. He got a 4-shaped weapon to the left side of his upper chest, but he's still alive, which is insane, because if you've seen the fight scenes in Malignant, you know how lucky it is he managed to survive. Though, in terms of a guy who managed to survive more than one film, there's Andrew Young, who survived Hatchet 3 and Victor Crowley, respectively, especially after his brothers Justin and Sean, also conveniently played by Perry and Shen, died. Or, well, got slain by Victor. Even though Andrew's whole thing is being afraid to do anything, and that's hilarious. Andrew Young wins by doing just absolutely necessary to live, and that's all. Going back to Sydney Park, she ended up playing Makani Young in There's Someone Inside Your House, and her backstory is pretty messed up. She was hazed by older varsity girls in Hawaii, forcing her to drink heavily, resulting in her accidentally pushing a friend into a bonfire and severely injuring her. And for a movie about a killer targeting people for their secrets, yeah, that's a lot for a final girl to go through, but she survived. The movie's okay at best, but glad Sydney got a chance to lead one. Now let's use this as an excuse to talk about Ella Wong. who started in The Void and was a supporting character in the Silent Night remake with her lesser role. Brenda, who was a dispatcher for the police while they're hunting down a killer Santa, which ends up slaughtering everyone but her and the lead, Aubrey. Brenda hid while the Santas fought each other until Aubrey made the flamethrower implode, and Aubrey escapes with Brenda but are in no mood to fight. But hey, at least those two survived the night, which is good. Her role in The Void gives her much more to do as an intern of the hospital crew working with a police officer in order to stop a cult trying to summon creatures from another dimension named Kim. She's able to survive, and even though it was off-screen, she defeated a cultist with either a fire axe or a fire extinguisher, and is able to reunite with her close friend she bonded with, Simon, which is good because she got to do more compared to Silent Nights, which is great. Taya Markell played Emily from Live Feed, a 2005 or 6 independent horror film from the late Liam Nicholson, who uses special effects works in other films, which was made during a torture of Corn Praise, leading to accusations of ripping up Hostel. So Live Feed has Emily, her future husband, and their 3 friends going to an abandoned adult film theater to have some fun, only to face off against the Yakuza, and she ends up as one of 2 survivors. A mixed bag for sure, but Tanya stopped acting in 2007, though at least she survived. And as I mentioned earlier, Friday the 13th's 10th movie, aka Jason X, had Rowan, the first female Asian final girl of the Friday movies. She's not necessarily the best final girl, and this is more of a team effort movie, so she kind of gets overshadowed a bit. But there's enough to like. You actually kind of feel bad for her because in the beginning, she's the one trying to warn all the scientists about Jason, was the one that originally was supposed to keep him on ice until the superiors didn't listen to her, and she managed to evade and took on Jason by surprising him inside the cybernetics pod until he stopped her, and then 400 years later, she manages to help out when both of them are freed from their imprisonment. Okay, so I know I said I was going to try to stick to movies, but I do kind of have to use TV shows. I Know What You Did Last Summer had a TV adaptation with Brianne Chu as one of the main characters, even though she's not the lead. In fact, spoilers in 3, 2, 1. It turns out her character, Margaret, was the killer. Yeah, this show is messy, but that's the first time we've ever seen an Asian character as a main antagonist in one of these. Also, quick interjection. Part of the motivation for making this video is that I never actually saw, that many people discussing Asian representation in horror, especially on YouTube, where I thought at least there'd be one video about it, but not even YouTube Shorts found anything, so I figured why not just roll the discussion talking about it. Plus, I am exploring this in good faith, and all I ask is that the comments be civil. Anyway, let me get back to the intermission, and thank you for listening, so let me just wrap up my final thoughts. So, what can we learn from all of these characters? Well, Black characters started getting better treated over the years in horror to the point where I can look at a handful of examples that die first. But when it comes to Asian characters and how people write them, I don't know. I think just in general, they should get a little bit more to do in horror movies. Granted, for some of the movies that we looked at post-2010, that seems to be the case. And if you're going to be a victim or killed, you might as well give them enough development or make the audience understand them so you feel bad if they died. On average, we get between 2 to 6 survivors of a horror movie at best, and it'd be cool to have more lead final girls be Asian like Sydney's characters, since even the ones aren't necessarily well received by the public or willing to have more Asian characters involved in the story. Honestly, while researching the number of Asian characters who died, I was pleasantly surprised to see that there were more survivors than I thought, and even a few Asian final boys, 14 dead characters and 14 survivors, and there was an even ratio. Asian Americans usually get on the representation train in a negative light, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in the month. But I generally hope we get some more Asian people involved in this space of horror, both characters and behind the scenes too. Especially when you have something like Sinners, which, while created by a Black person, did go out of its way to explore what it was like being Asian in that time period, and even made you feel sympathetic despite their circumstances not being high enough to be placed on either side of the list, especially since we know what happened to the daughter. But yeah, tell me your thoughts in the comment section. Leave a note telling me if I forgot a character that you thought I should have mentioned, because I feel like there's a few more characters that I really could have brought up but just didn't think about or didn't get the chance to talk about. And I hope you all have an amazing day and night or sleep. BIP Bizarre Interest Productions, signing off.